Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to Saturday's upgrade and commander build video of the Tier 10 Pan American cruiser, the San Martin. So we're going to be jumping right in and giving a thorough look at this new Tier 10 tech cruise ship in the game. So let's crack on and let's talk about what type of cruiser is San Martin. And she is a light cruiser, very similar to Rooster in certain regards. So do have to be mindful of the fact that you are a light cruiser when we go to look at her armor scheme. She is not a long-range sniper cruiser, nor would I say she's necessarily a brawling cruiser. She's pretty much that mid-range cruiser. All right, so you have radar, you have 9-kilometer radar, your detectability range, your max concealed build is 9.1. So basically you get spotted, you'll pretty much be able to almost instantly detect whatever's picking you up. Of course, unless it's a sub that spots you and immediately panics and dips beneath the waves. So that can be rather frustrating waste of a radar here in World of Warships. But she plays around this mid-range really well with her AP guns. These guns having the 152mm with improved pin angles. So let's talk a little more about the ship. So let's look at the armor. Okay, so she's covered in 25mm plating. Pretty much to be expected with a light cruiser. Now she gets the exception that she has a 30mm deck armor plating. Quite nice. Helps a little bit with that HE resilience, but I mean you do have kind of a lengthy superstructure. Not a massive superstructure, but lengthy for a light cruiser nonetheless. Looking down here below, you can see a 127mm Citadel armor belt. So you can actually, it sticks up a little bit of water, as you can see. So you can actually troll and bounce some pretty large caliber shells in the game. So you can utilize that to your advantage and bouncing, you know, the heavy cruiser, battle cruiser, depending on what type of battleship we're talking about, it is possible to bounce. So that is useful information to know, I would think. Going here, so you can see the Citadel, the armor belt. So you can see it's at 127mm. It is above waterline, so you have an above waterline Citadel. In traditional fashion, it's going to extend from your forward main battery turret to your rearmost battery turrets. Last thing we need to make mention of is the guns. So light cruiser guns, what type of armor are we talking about? Well, your frontal plate armor is 165mm, side 76, top 102, a little more stronger in the back, 178. So actually the rear of these gun mounts are the most durable. So it tends sometimes to trade off between the front or the back. So now if a cruiser, a cruiser, can be a light cruiser, can be a heavy cruiser and up, can incapacitate your guns. So we will talk a little bit about that. So do be mindful of that. Now you don't have a square stern, so that's a little bit helpful, but you're just going to have to be mindful because, you know, there's not much travel distance. Maybe if someone's trying to be cheeky and Citadel you through the back, or if it's battleship at longer range, drops one in through the deck. Okay. So, other thing to make mention we'll be talking about is the torpedoes. So these are pretty good torpedoes. We'll talk a little more about it, but you have 10 torpedoes total, 5 on each side. So they are exposed. So, you know, that is a weakness in terms of if you have skilled players. Some average, maybe average skilled players do this, but you can actually just purposely try to aim and knock these out, right? So if a San Martin's yellowing you, I'm in Salem, you know, just switch to my high explosive or my Worcester, and then I'll just aim for these guns so he can't troll me like he might be thinking about doing. So, so not the luxury of maybe having it within the hull of the ship, would be a little bit more protection, but we'll talk about that as well. So with the modules, there's no upgraded modules to pick up here, just only the upgrades, which I'll talk about in a moment. So we've gone for a reload build. So that means these 152mm guns are getting a 5.3 second reload time, and being light cruiser guns, a decent 180-degree turn time, 8.3 seconds. Maximum AP shell damage, 3,400. The hull, we've built into the hull, we have survivability expert on our commander. So we have a more robust health pool of 54,300. Otherwise, it'd be around 50 or 1,000, maybe just underneath. So I do recommend picking up Survivability Expert here on the San Martin. It's very helpful, especially since you have an amazing heal, and we'll talk about that. Your torpedoes, reload time, 106 seconds. You could build into that and get to that even lower than what it is. 10.5 kilometer range, so you can actually stealth torpedo with this ship. You have 1.4 kilometer room to play with. Typically I utilize these torpedoes if my flank's collapsing, and I'll just start throwing them at the enemy. And they do decent damage of 17,500. Torpedo speed, 66 knots, excuse me. So that is, they're pretty decent torpedoes, and I'm going to talk a little more about them when we go to talk about it in the armaments. Gunfire control system, 15.5 kilometer range. Now we could bump this up to 18 kilometers. So that is if you took the gunfire control system mod 2. But for myself, I've tend to lean more towards the that build. And again, we'll talk more about that range here in a moment. Maximum speed, 34 knots. Take Sarah Mike. You're going to be pushing up 35.7 knots. So she's not a slow light cruiser. She gets along fairly well. And in my opinion, that is beneficial, and I quite welcome that. Now, in terms of the upgrades, so we'll talk a bit about this. So you actually get spotting aircraft, and that's one of the special upgrades you could build into. But for what I've done for now is I've gone for the main arms modification 1. This reduces the risk of your main battery and torpedo tubes becoming incapacitated by negative 20%. Main battery survivability and torpedo tube survivability plus 50%, and repair time if either of those should become incapacitated, negative 20%. So, when I was illustrating, there's a reason why I was illustrating that gun armor, right? 165 on the front, it was like 178 on the back, I think. Yeah, then 76 on the side. Then your torpedoes are out and exposed. So for myself, it helps me, feel a little more comfortable that I build into the survivability of my guns, hopefully keeping them going right along. I wouldn't bother building into the secondaries. You don't have secondaries, nor building into the AA mount survivability. In terms of other tier 10 light cruisers, or tier 10 cruisers in the game, excuse me, you rank 12 among all other cruisers, not building into all the specific upgrades. So if you're really wanting to play an AA light cruiser, you would go for Brisbane, Minotaur, Worcester being the top 3. Magazine modification 1, risk of your ship's magazine detonating, negative 70%. Just take Juliet Charlie combat signal. Completely eliminates the risk of your ship's magazine detonating. So run this in ranked randoms, brawls, clan battles, right? I don't bother wasting combat signals in co-op unless it's my RAM flag. Spotting aircraft. This increases the action time of the spotting aircraft in rapid takeoff spotter consumables. So you can get a 30% addition to your spotter plane. I'm not so sure how I necessarily feel about running spotter plane and San Martin, but we can talk a little bit more about that when the time comes. For the second slot, if you don't have the coal, or maybe you're saving up some coal for a ship purchase, I would just say take engine room protection, reducing the risk of your engine and steering gears becoming capacitated by negative 20%, and then engine repair time and steering gears repair time, negative 20%. Now we have helped ourselves out here. We've taken the last stand where our ship remains partially able to sustain speed and maneuverability if either of those two should be knocked out. So with the light cruiser, that lifestyle is quite frequent, so that's why we have it on our commander, and why I'd recommend taking it here in terms of a standard upgrade. Now, for a special upgrade, with what I would really like to run is the surveillance radar modification 1. Consumable action time plus 20%. So that's going to take our radar, which right now is a 25-second action time, and it's going to bump it up to a 30-second action time. So if I click on it, we go into Armory, we'll talk about its worth, and you get a coupon, 1 coupon every month to take off. I believe it is negative 25% of that full cost of that piece. For myself, I'm saving up coal for an expensive coal ship right now, so that's why I'm not so enthralled to desire of picking it up right now. So 17,000 coal. Otherwise, with coupon, should be, I don't know if it's actually going to show. Well, I think it gets you down around 12,000, like 750 coal, maybe something like that. It's around that. So I would recommend picking, if you're going to pick up, you like the San Martin, it is a really good ship. It's not a bad ship, it's not an okay ship, it's a really good ship in the game. I intend to definitely make this investment because I like running this advanced radar here on San Martin. Now in terms of the third slot, you get really nice dispersion with this ship. I've decided to build into it farther with the Aiming Systems Modification 1. This reduces your maximum main battery shell dispersion by -7%, meaning that you're getting tighter horizontal and tighter vertical maximum dispersion. So probably taking anywhere from 4 to 8, maybe 9 meters off either one. I'll put a little screenshot, should already be on the screen here on the right, so you can compare what it would be with versus without. Even though we have a nerf here with the main battery modification 3 on terms of our main battery traverse speed, -13%, you know, I feel pretty comfortable with the 8.3 second 180 degree turn time. Not that big of a deal, so I don't feel led to take main battery modification 2, nor do I feel led to build into the AAA, nor do I feel to just build into the torpedo speed. Now you could, but it's kind of more about the guns with the ship. It's not, maybe we would talk a little bit more about it if you had like 2 racks per each side, you know, 20 torpedoes total, 10 on each side. But you don't. So really it's coming down to your guns. That's your main damage output with this ship. Fourth slot, we've gone for the propulsion modification 1. Time taken to reach full engine power when accelerating, -50%. I run this, I believe, on all of my light cruisers. I quite like the skill. Whether it's you just need to accelerate, get away some torpedoes, or you're doing some open gunboating, and you're slowing down, speeding up, playing with your speed a lot, as I do that quite regularly with my WS keys. So I prefer running this. Now, if you're kind of more inclined, you would want to check out steering gears modification 1. You could definitely do that. It reduces your rudder shift time by -20%. So you could test them out if you feel like you've got the credits to test either one out. But for myself and my cruiser playstyle, and what I would kind of more generally recommend is having the propulsion modification 1. Not really worth talking about the others here. For the fifth slot, if we're going for the very pretty standard San Martin build, where we are building it to conceal, so we reduce our ship's detectability range by air, dispersion of shells fired by enemies attacking, +5%, so slightly worse dispersion when enemy ships are shooting at our ship. 5%, it's not amazing, but it is something nonetheless. So that brings, with our commander also having concealment, 9.1, 6.9 by air. Now the good news is your AA is actually a 6.9 kilometer AA range. So as soon as you get spotted by aircraft, your AA guns will be firing after a slight delay, and the AA gunners wake up and decide to load the guns because it's immediately start shooting at 6.9 by the time the planes get into your AA, or they're more like maybe 6.6, 6.5. Because that's just how the game works for some reason. So I would recommend concealment system modification 1. You know, if you're gonna go for a lighthouse build or a steering gears modification 2 build, I would not say San Martin is the ship to do that in. You would do this in Worcester first versus San Martin, just for having the high explosive, which you only get armor piercing here on the San Martin. So not really worth it in my opinion. So this is pretty much the clear winner here in the 5th slot. Now in terms of the 6th slot, so I've gone for a DPM build. So main battery reload time reduced to -12%, and that's giving us that 5.3 second reload time. Quite like it. That's not even taking into account something like Adrenaline Rush. Otherwise, some players may feel led to take the gunfire control system modification 2, which is going to be taking your gun range out to 18 kilometers, or technically like 17.99 gun range. It is possible to do that. I don't think these shells are per se. Let's compare. Let's see if they're as flighty as Worcester. America. Okay, so let's look here. So we have 812 meters a second. What about Worcester? they are the same. I was like, you know what? It's not actually going to surprise me if they're the same. Okay, well, the AP is actually slower. They kept it high explosive. So these AP shells are going to travel to target a little bit faster than Worcester. So it is possible to take this, right? I would say, again, if you have the credits and you go to, like, if I went to demount, right, or sell, it's gonna be 25 doubloons or 1.5 million credits. You can test them out, see what you like. But for myself, I'm mostly playing more with how the ship is designed, in my opinion, with playing around more the objective areas, right? I've got my radar, I've got my hydroacoustic search. I want to support my destroyers. I want to play around the caps, play around the islands. So I don't feel as led with Gunfire Control System Mod 2. Rather go for my DPM. Now, in terms of armaments, so you have the EP shells that have improved penetration angles, 152 millimeter. In total, they actually lay it out here for us, because we technically have two different turrets, right? So you have 3, then 2, 2. Meaning you have 10 guns in total here on the San Martin. Maximum damage 3,400. That slightly better shell velocity than Worcester with 812 meters a second. Maximum range 15.5 kilometers. So initially, when Wargaming introduced the ship in the dev blogs, they gave it high explosive, and then they eventually took it away. Probably because it was like, well, that's kind of, you're just making the ship a better Worcester at that point with the super heal and just kind of what the ship is capable of. So they just shifted down to AP and made the heal that much better, where you heal back. We'll talk about the heal. We'll talk about the heal. Don't get ahead of yourself, Flimsy. Now, in terms of torpedoes, as is right now, in terms of reaction time, I was a bit curious about the reaction time, because your detectability range with these torpedoes, if you look at the bottom, are 1.3 kilometers. So these torpedoes, in terms of reaction time, without building into them, rank number 3 among all tier 10 cruisers in the game. You actually tied with Venezia, number 2. And then for Genon is king because of those deep water torpedoes. So it's a 7.3 second reaction time with these torpedoes. So eat your heart out, Yodo. The Yodo torps having over a 10-second reaction time. And we can improve. We could lower the reaction time. So, for example, if you took Swift Fish, I think it is on the commander, you can get it down from 7.3 to 7 seconds. Then if you really wanted to troll more so, you could build into here, right, with having a slightly faster torp speed. But that's really not what the ship's about. But just know that these torpedoes are pretty decent in terms of not giving the enemy ships as better of reaction time, since your detectability range is only 1.3 kilometers, where Yodo has a higher torpedo detectability range. So again, 106 second reload time, range of 10.5. You can stealth torp, 1.4 kilometer window if you go for full concealed build. Maximum damage 17,500. If you feel like building in torpedoes, you can actually get these torpedoes up to 20,000 maximum damage per torpedo. Torp speed 66 knots, and we can bump that up a little bit with our commander. Now, our depth charge airstrike has an 8 kilometer range, 30 second reload time. You get 2 flights and 1 aircraft in attacking flight, and 2 bombs per payload, right? So 1 aircraft, 2 bombs per payload, so you get 4 bombs total if you use it back to back. So it's helpful. I do like the fact that it's 8 kilometers and not like 6. 10 kilometers would be fun. You saw in yesterday's video, we actually ended up killing a sub with depth charge airstrikes. I think he died due to flooding from them. So having 8 kilometers is helpful, especially if you're playing around key objective areas like we were in yesterday's game. I'll tag it at the end of this video, so if you want to go check it out, you can see what we did in that battle on the Islands of Ice. And then they decided to put a pixie dust button, a gimmick button, on this new ship line, being the consumable operational readiness combat instructions. So the activation condition is that you need to hit enemy ships with your main guns to increase your completion progress with each hit. So you have this little semicircle bar. If you are inactive, you start losing your progress. When your progress reaches 100%, it cannot be lost. To activate the combat instructions, press the F key is what I have it bound to. Progress per main battery shell hit, 3%. Time of inactivity before progress lost, 15 seconds. So basically, if you've not landed anything within 3 salvos, then you're going to lose your progress. Progress loss per second of inactivity, 15%. So it doesn't just immediately evaporate. It just goes down slowly. And what it does is, the effect is a consumable preparation reload time of negative 85%. Action time, 30 seconds. So your consumables, which you have a good number. Now let's talk about how that takes in place into effect here. Okay, so first off, your damage control party, pretty straightforward, it's pretty normal. An action time of 5 seconds, cooldown time of 60 seconds. And then what you're going to see here is between the heal, our radar, actually I don't know about the hydro, yeah, pretty lengthy hydro as well. You can see, this is a bit misleading because I think when I was looking at the WoW's ship fitting tool, I think it was saying like I didn't get 180 seconds. I think I had it less, so that's a little interesting to read there. Yeah, so that wasn't necessarily accurate. So my bad for saying that quite a little bit incorrectly. It was longer than I thought because it wasn't making sense when I looked at the article and I saw what was happening in battle. Anyhow, specialized repair teams means you get a massive heal back and taking some massive hits. So you can get wrecked by a battleship for 20 some K and you could practically heal all that back. That's mainly due to the if you take Citadel damage. Originally, when they were developing the ship, they were saying you can heal back 50%. Then they bumped it up to 80% Citadel damage you can repair. And that is massive. And I think they did that because they took away the high explosive shelf. That's just my guess. I'm not entirely sure. But you can see as is, it's 814 HP per second. Now, if we take India Delta, which I'm going to recommend you doing, playing randoms, ranked, brawl, clan battles, you take the ship in clan battles, plus 977, action time of 20 seconds, cooldown time 180 seconds. That is really long for a cruiser heal. You know, if we were to compare that to Worcester, you're going to see 114 seconds. That's with November Foxtrot. Otherwise, it's going to be 120 seconds. You can see the Hydro, 120 versus 180. The heal is actually 80 seconds. So, excuse me, I started off on the wrong foot there. But 80 seconds for a cooldown time. Whereas San Martin, they add 100 seconds. And the reason where the consumable operational readiness comes into play is it reduces your preparation time by negative 85%. So let's say you take a massive hit. So you're going to pop your heal, wait for the heal to finish, and then press your F key, activate the consumable operational readiness. If you've fully filled the progress bar, hit that, and you're going to shave off a ton of time on your repair party. You know, if you've let some time elapse before you use it, like let's say you've gone from 180 to, let's say, I don't know, 120 seconds or something, probably about the time you'll have it back up as this finishes. It's action time of 30 seconds, right? Maybe even faster, because it's just that good. So you get 4 of them. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we look at the commander in terms of a superintendent. Radar, as we were kind of already referencing as well, they lengthen the time of the radar as well. It's a 9-kilometer radar, concealment 9.1, so you have a 0.1 kilometer area to play with in terms of it could be detected, and you wouldn't be able to detect that enemy ship if he's sitting right at 9.1. So pretty much you pop this radar, you're going to see what's spotting you, unless it's like a sub, and he dives down rather quickly. Still, I recommend taking November Foxtrot combat signals. And you're going to reduce that consumable cooldown time, and that really helps here in the San Martin just because of how long they've made these consumables. Now, if you gave up surveillance radar, you can then take the spotting aircraft. Now, I don't know how much I would say that this is worth it. If I was going to play a cruiser with spotter plane, maybe I'm more apt to run something like Hindenburg, a couple of the other cruisers in the game. Let's just take this away. Yeah, Venezia, you know, something like that. So, do I recommend taking spotting aircraft in San Martin? No, but maybe it has a purpose in some battles. The way I see the ship is built and revolves around is playing around objective key areas, supporting destroyers, and I try to be a team player, and that's how I feel like Wargaming's designed this ship. So that's what I try to go for. Also, for the fact that you do get not a standard hydroacoustic search range, but a short-range hydroacoustic search, same as what you would find on British destroyers. A 3-kilometer detection of torpedoes and ships. Cooldown time 171 seconds, normally be 180. Action time 100 seconds, you get 4 of them. So this is more just for your benefit in 2 ways. You can use it in offensive capacity if you're pushing a smoke screen and there's an enemy destroyer hiding in it. You're trying to find that pesky sub that's affecting your team on your flank. And also being able to utilize it to avoid torpedoes, especially if there's those deep water torpedoes in the game. You have a better idea where they're at, so you can try to move your ship in avoiding them. So it's more of a defensive hydro than it is an offensive hydro. It's no German 6-kilometer hydro in that regard. Now I do have defensive AA. Don't really recommend. It's kind of just better to go with the short-range hydroacoustic search. If you're going to go for an AA cruiser, again, Brisbane, Minotaur, Worcester would be better route to run here. In my personal opinion, you are free to disagree, as mileage may vary. Now, we're getting pretty long in this video, so I need to really progress through. But in terms of what would I run here on the San Martin, probably if I want to take all 8 combat signals, I just run this. If I'm only going to run a few, like I said, I don't want to be as cost and noteworthy on the ship, and I'm going to run hydro, then I would take this. If I don't want hydro, I'll pop that off. So this is what I would like to run here on this ship. Now in terms of our commander, let's hop right into it. So for a 10-point commander is the route I'm going to recommend first, and then there's going to be some different things you can do with this ship. So it's a bit of a somewhat some flexibility in terms of what you can do with this ship and how you may seek to build a full 21-point commander. So as I said, last stand, pretty vital to have on a light cruiser. If your engine or steering gears get knocked out, your ship can still partially remain sustained speed and maneuverability. Quite regularly, probably going to happen with light cruisers, so you're really going to want this skill. Nothing frustrating being dead in water, or your rudder being stuck and you're turning back into the enemy team that's pushing you. Priority target. For a light cruiser player, I just value having priority target more so than incoming fire alert. Maybe if I was playing a tanky heavy cruiser, battle cruiser, I wouldn't want to have priority target. Maybe I'd swap out to take incoming fire alert, give myself an extra point to spend elsewhere. But for here, I feel more comfortable having priority target. Light cruiser life in World of Warships, where there's increasingly large caliber guns from 457, 460s, 510s, right? Oh, gosh. Feels nervous as a light cruiser in World of Warships. Now for a 6-point, you can go either way first. Maybe you want to pick up Survivability Expert to increase your HP pool or health pool, right? So we're rocking 54,300. Or maybe you want a little more of that DPM as you lose health. So your reload time for your main battery, torpedo tube, airstrike armament, which I think that just translates to depth charge airstrike. You don't have a secondary battery, and you get a slight buff on your AA continuous damage. So it's up to you between one of these two you'd want. Then for the 10-point build, then you're going to want the Concealment Expert to get you down to that 9.1 by air, 9.1 by sea, 6.9 by air. My brain worked ahead of itself there. So what I would do, probably what I would tell you is for a 10-point build, do this first, and then for a 13-point build, go for Adrenaline Rush. Now, having this new cruiser line added to the game, I don't have high point commanders, right? This is the highest point commander I have. The rest are going to be 10 and less, even though, Atlantico, for example, has been around for a while. But alas, here we are. So for a 16-point commander, I'm going to recommend going for Superintendent. This ship is pretty consumable heavy, so giving yourself 5 specialized repair teams, 5 short-range hydroacoustic search, and 5 non-kilometer radars. Because you can burn through them pretty quick if you're regularly taking advantage of the consumable operational readiness combat instructions, right? So you can be quite the pain to deal with if you have a lot of these consumables at hand. So build into what the ship offers is what I would say. So hence Superintendent. Now really from this point, I would say beyond this 16-point build, then what you do with the next 5 points, really up to you. there's different routes you can go. I know us players can have our preferences on different things. So I'll kind of give you an idea of what I feel like maybe I would want to go for and try. I got tempted about the A Defense and the ASW Expert, but you know, it's ranks 12 among all tier 10 cruisers in terms of her AA output. Not that it's like a rune, right? But I just like, if I'm gonna really build an AA, like I just do that with Minotaur. I have that with Minotaur or Worcester, but maybe not so much here. Maybe there's some other things I want to build in, like the torpedoes, because you do not get torpedoes on Worcester. So the enhanced torpedo explosive charge gives a bump of plus 15%. So you could take these torpedoes over from 17,500 to 20,125. So you're adding 2,625 additional damage per torpedo, and if you manage to land all 5, right, you're doing up over 12,500 damage, something like that. If I do the math right in my head, so that's pretty good stuff, right? So it really becomes more or less up to you. But I think about that. I think about what if I want my torpedoes to reload a little faster, right? Get them down from 106 seconds, I believe it was, to 95.4 seconds. So just over a minute and a half. Not too shabby there. Another thing you might consider is top grade gunner. But this means you have to be within the standard detectability range of an enemy ship. So right now it had to be within 9.1 kilometers or less for this top grade gunner skill to activate. And I'm not so sure about this, right? Because you're not doing a lighthouse build like Hindenburg or like a Worcester. So, Also, you have the radio location. This will give you an indicator of the nearest ship closest to you. Now, this might be helpful to an extent, but the fact that you have this bad boy, this consumable operational readiness, that's assuming you have this skill ready at hand. You know, you can really shave off a lot of time on your surveillance radar and have it back up off of cooldown rather quickly. So these are kind of these different counter arguments I make in my head when I'm looking at this. And that's why I really say that I feel like, honestly, it can be up to you and what you want to build into. Now, this 2-point skill here, I can lengthen my hydro and radar. So for my radar, let's say if I took radar in slot 3 here, slot 2. Right, I said you'd go from a 25 to a 30-second action time on your radar. Taking this would bump me up to 33. So I'm kind of tempted, right? And then also I'm getting the benefit of having a longer hydro. Also, I honestly quite like that. Now, if you're going to take spotter plane, right, then you could build into Eye in the Sky, spotting aircraft consumable cooldown, negative 50%. You get 2 additional charges, but it's not showing up because I don't have spotter plane up. So if I did put spotter plane up, I come back in here, then you're going to see it becomes available, right? But then this skill would only be activated for hydro. But I like playing radar on my San Martin. So if you did that, then that means, I only had 3 skill points left. Then at that point, I'm probably tempted to go with this. Now, I really think there's a lot of room to play around here. I mean, you could even go for a more torpedo build, so then you're getting, a faster torpedo reload time. So I'm tempted, right? There's just different things you can do with the ship. So honestly, as I bring this video to a close, if you already have a very high point commander, let us know in the comments what you're running, what you have found useful. And if it's frustrating that you don't have the combat instructions already ready at hand, then I can see more of the value of having a radio location skill, whether you're dealing with a submarine that's surfaced somewhat near you, or a destroyer that's lurking nearby, and you're just not sure where he is, and you want to get a general idea so you know how to position to avoid torpedoes. Then I can see, there's a good value, a case to be made for the radio location. So I'm just torn. This is something that I lean more towards to myself. But maybe my mind changes as time progresses, time goes on. These torpedoes don't have a terrible reload time, and when you get stuck in a bad situation where you have a ship yellowing you, it's nice to just have that little bit higher alpha damage with the torpedoes. So maybe just in general, this is what I'd recommend. And then maybe you're thinking something like RPF. And then at that point, I would say for lulls, build into the torpedo speed. So you get 69 knots, and then instead of having 7.3 second reaction time, they have a 7-second reaction time. It shaves off 0.3 seconds. And I'm also tempted about this. Still be something like that. So I don't know. I'm going to play a little longer. I know the next skill I'm picking up is definitely going to be Superintendent. I foresee myself redistributing this commander probably once or twice. I'm just curious, what could I get out of this top grade gunner skill? Is it actually worth it, or because you're only going to be getting the main battery since you don't have a secondary reload here. So that's going to bring the video to a close. Sorry I went a little longer. I try to keep it within 30 minutes, but this ship just has some additional things going on with it than a standard tier 10 ship in the game. So if you liked today's video, give a thumbs up. If you didn't, give a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you're subscribed already, thanks so much. I would appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.